All right, item number 6.
Item 6, Community Service Organization reports.
Any community service organization reports? Seeing none. Item number 10.
Item 10, resolution approving a contract with the Colorado Department of Transportation regarding the I-25 GAP project. Lori Sego, Senior Assistant County Attorney, and Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer, Department of Public Works.
All right. Ms. Sego, step away from the dais or go to the podium.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lori Sego, Senior Assistant County Attorney. I'm here accompanied by Jennifer Irvin, the County Engineer. We're here today to present to you the IGA between CDOT and the county for the I-25 GAP project, which, as you all know, is well underway. This is, I believe, our final step in getting all of the appropriate agreements in place. The first one, as you recall, was the term sheet with the Federal Highway Administration for the federal funding portion of the project. And I'm not going to go through each provision of this IGA. Please stop me if you have any questions. I'm just going to hit the highlights. This is a standard IGA that is used in any project in which the county and the state are cooperating for transportation improvements. I do want to highlight on page 2, section 4B, talks about the funding that the county is appropriating toward the project. And again, this will be only toward that portion of the project that is within El Paso County. So it will be on I-25 from county line south to approximately Highway 105 in the Monument area. And it states in this contract that the local agency, which is the county, has appropriated and budgeted $6,000 for payment under the contract in 2019 and an additional $1.5 million for payment in 2020. This contract does set a maximum amount of $15 million, but going above the $7.5 million that's already been appropriated would require additional discussion and appropriation by this board in the future.
Yeah, can I stop you for just a second
Yes.
there? Commissioner Vanderwerf has a question.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if it was my ears or something else, but I thought I heard you say $6,000, not $6 million.
If I did, that was an error. $6 million this year in 2019.
Thank you very much.
Then following that, you have additional provisions regarding CDOT's provision of the they're going to be the ones overseeing and performing the actual design and construction of the project, and again, it is well underway. Section 8 on page 5 is a provision that is unique to this contract, and it references the term sheet that both the county and CDOT entered into with the Federal Highway Administration. What this Section 8 does is gives CDOT, and CDOT has agreed to assume most of the responsibility under that term sheet. So for example, if the term sheet requires certain periodic reports on the project, CDOT will prepare those and El Paso County will submit them under its obligation under the term sheet. The state is going to administer the infra-grant funds that have been provided for the project. And again, it highlights some of the other terms of the term sheet that CDOT is assuming responsibility for performing. On page 6, section 12 explicitly provides that it will be the state's responsibility to maintain these improvements once they're constructed for their useful life. And then finally, Exhibit A to the agreement, which is found on page 12, just sets forth some more detail about the scope of the work. It does highlight that it is the construction of an additional lane on I-25 in each direction from Monument to Castle Rock. Specifically, what we are funding again is State Highway 105 north to County Line Road. It also provides at the very end of that scope of work that our contribution is up to $15 million. And as I discussed earlier, right now we've appropriated $7.5 million for this year and next year. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Sego?
Okay.
No, seeing none. Ms. Irvin, do you have anything to add? All right, I think I'm going to open this up for some public comment here. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on agenda item number 10? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment phase of this hearing and bring it up to the dais for some discussion and a vote. Commissioner Williams.
Yes, I've been going over several different items here. One of the things this contract does do, and we have set aside, is $7.5 million. When this went out to the ballot, it authorized up to $6 million. When the grant was submitted, they said in the grant specifically, it says El Paso County Ballot Measure 1A, if approved, would provide the capacity to fund $15 million towards the I-25 Gap Corridor project. I think one of the great problems we've had all throughout this is the provision of toll lanes within this grant. And somewhere we're going to have to find another $7.5 million. And I know that I have several commissioners who will disagree with me on that. It seems to me we made a commitment in a grant that no one saw. And so we made that commitment, and yet now we're saying we will fund $7.5 million, and I honestly do not see where we're going to find the other $7.5 million, given the fact that the governor keeps sending us down funded and unfunded mandates. And so, while I'll certainly be voting for this, I do have grave concerns about whether or not we're going to meet that agreement. And if we do not meet that agreement, what will be the unintended consequences of that? Because CDOT's expecting $15 million and we're only able to send $7.5 million. So those would be my comments, is we're going to have to find a way somewhere along the line to find the other $7.5 million on this project. And so I do have those concerns. I've got all sorts of paperwork up here where they started talking about the toll lanes as early as 2015. No, when the coalition started meeting, I had printed that out, where they started talking about the toll lane very, very early. It was in the Gazette, and unfortunately, when the grant was signed, none of the other commissioners were made aware that nearly every other paragraph on here says express lanes or toll lanes. And I was going to take it apart and count how many times it says express and toll, because I've been challenged by one of my former opponents in a campaign. But I do have concerns as to how we'll meet the other $7.5 million commitment on this.
Thank you. Well said. Anything else, Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will be supporting this agreement. I think it's the right thing to do. I do appreciate the way the words are characterized. It's up to $15 million, and that gives us the flexibility based on budget challenges and so forth. But I want to make an additional point. I do believe that the design of the highway could include 4 lanes in each direction, with the 4th lane being a toll lane. I've done an enormous amount of research on that, and it is possible to do. I have expressed this directly to the CDOT director and to several of the senior staff members of CDOT and other people in the community willing to listen. From a design point of view, this is achievable with the current construction, with one exception. It looks to me like it requires one additional bridge construction, which is maybe a $10 million issue, but it's $350 million now, and for about $10 million more, we could make this a 4-lane highway in each direction. And I continue to encourage CDOT to seriously consider that. When we talk about the fact that the Colorado Springs area and El Paso County area is going to grow to a city and a county of over 1 million people, we're really going to have a city pair of cities and counties in Colorado, and we need highway infrastructure for the traffic that's going to travel between those 2 pairs of high population centers. That 4-lane highway, I think, is essential, and I am absolutely certain that if we continue the construction of this project at 3 lanes each direction, we will only be a few years before we're talking seriously about putting the fourth lane in. But right now is the best time to do it because the construction is ongoing. So I would continue to encourage CDOT to seriously consider adding a fourth lane in each direction because I believe our community needs it. I believe it's not only beneficial to us in El Paso County and Colorado Springs and our other municipalities down here, it's also beneficial to Denver because we are a source of labor for their businesses up there. So when they can gain access to labor in Denver, it's of great, great value to Denver as well, having a 4-lane highway in each direction. So I just want to put that out on the public record that I continue to fight for and support a 4-lane highway each direction. Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, just want to highlight this contract is only obligating the $7.5 million, so I can support and approve this today. I did want to highlight that the original agreement was up to $15 million if, and I want to make that out there, if future funding is available, and it was understood, as presented to me at that time, that $7.5 million was our commitment, and that anything above that was not a guarantee nor a promise of $15 million. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to echo some of my colleagues' comments here, and in particular, Commissioner Williams, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're completely right and accurate and pointed out the issues that are relevant in this discussion very well, and so I'll try not to belabor that point too much. I also agree with Commissioner Vanderwerf. I've been saying all along that this should be a 4-lane road as well, and that it'd be great. You know, the compromise should be, well, if we're going to toll one of them, let's put 3 free lanes and toll the 4th lane. And I think the studies actually show that once this one's completed, it's going to be about 10 years before we have the need for the 4th lane or have the serious need for the 4th lane. So I wish that that CDOT would, you know, just bite the bullet and do it right now. But here's the problem, and here's why they're not going to do that. I think a few reasons. Number one, the governor of the state of Colorado is not prioritizing transportation, and even if it's only $10 million, which they've said about $50 million to add that 4th lane to it, cost of concrete, things of that nature, and to be able to keep the shoulders wide enough to protect our first responders. I'll buy that. I'll buy that it's a $50 million cost to add that additional 4th lane. I don't think that's unreasonable because it's going to be $100 million when we need to add it 10 years from now. But since the governor of the state of Colorado has not prioritized transportation spending, that $50 million isn't there. I think CDOT's operating on a shoestring right now, and the dollars just simply aren't there. That's incredibly unfortunate. Number two, I think CDOT engaged in a policy several years ago that said, listen, if we're going to add new capacity in the state of Colorado, we're going to toll that new capacity. I don't think that's a good policy. I think it's an incorrect policy and a wrong policy, but that is their policy. And the reason that is their policy and the reason that they won't deviate from that policy is if they add new capacity for this stretch of road in El Paso County without tolling it, then that puts in jeopardy their ability to toll new capacity anywhere else in the future. I think that should be just fine, but they don't, and that's why they're not going to deviate from their policy of adding new capacity without tolling it. Again, I don't think it's right, but that's the motivator for CDOT to toll all new capacity moving forward. I wish they would consider something else, but they're not going to. I also agree with many of, or pretty much all of Commissioner Williams' comments here about, listen, we've made a $7.5 million commitment. We would like that to be $15 million. I hope that we're able to come up with those dollars necessary to complete this project moving forward. I think it's the right thing to do. I don't think that we should have to put local dollars into state and federal projects, but that's the reality that we live in. That's where we are. And if El Paso County had not stood up and said, we'll figure out how to come up with the financing in order to make this project happen, we'd still be complaining about the 2 lanes on I-25 and be complaining that it's going to be another 10 years before we're able to figure out how to pay for it to get the project moving forward. So one of the things that I think that we need to consider and understand and know in this is that we cannot let perfection be the enemy of the good in this circumstance. Should El Paso County be paying for this? No, but it needs to get done. Should it have a toll lane? No, but it needs to get done. We have an obligation not only to the citizens of the state of Colorado to make sure we're doing our part to provide infrastructure spending, which is a core function of government, one of the few core functions of government. So we need to get this project done. It needs to happen. But we also have an obligation not only to the citizens of the state of Colorado, we have an obligation to our first responders. Far too many times we have seen accidents along that stretch of road that have to pull off on this 4 or 5 foot shoulder, and then our first responders would have to deal with folks in that little bit of shoulder. That certainly put their lives at risk. In fact, in an 18-month period, 2 state troopers lost their life in that section of road because we didn't have adequate shoulders for first responders to work within to do their jobs effectively. So in addition to the citizens of the state of Colorado, we have an obligation and a responsibility to our first responders to do everything we can to make them safe, to keep them protected. And I'm absolutely convinced that while this isn't a perfect road by any stretch of the imagination, it is going to go a whole lot further to protect our first responders than the current configuration that's out there, or the configuration before the construction was started. This is the right thing to do. I'm happy to support this motion, and I hope we can find the other $7.5 million to help get this project through the finish line. But I have the same concerns that Commissioner Williams does in that we're getting so many unfunded mandates from the state of Colorado. Maybe that's going to be hard to do in the future. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to add, because we didn't mention it in any of the discussions, but the agreement of this contract, which includes the original $7.5 million, which we are approving today, is in accordance with the Tabor retention vote that was approved by residents in 2017. And that's what included the $7.5 million for the I-25 gap. Thank you.
Yeah, so what you're saying there is the citizens of the state of Colorado are willing to pay for transportation spending in the state. I hope you hear that too, Mr. Governor. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a little bit further clarification on why I believe it's possible to put in a 4-lane highway. So the current design for the gap includes a 12-lane emergency lane on the outside and a 15-foot emergency lane on the inside. So in a similar design construct to what CDOT has done on eastbound I-70, they could turn on and turn off a toll lane on that inside 15-foot emergency lane without having to add additional pavement to the highway. Now, it turns out that CDOT has been telling us during this construction project that we're getting a 67-foot wide highway during the full 17 miles, but it turns out that is not true. There are 10 locations where that 67 feet is compromised, and then it becomes problematic to deliver a 4th lane at one location, and that one location would require an additional bridge construction. CDOT has mentioned that there's more than one location, but I've looked at the numbers. CDOT showed me the design, and it's actually only one place that is physically unable to get to a 4-lane highway, so it requires a bridge construction there. So that is why it is actually a little bit less than $50 million. That's a statement that CDOT has said to us, but it is in fact, if you're willing to use that inside 15-foot emergency lane, you do not need a $50 million investment in order to get to a 4-lane highway. It is much, much less. And it just seems to make sense to me if we're going to spend $350 million on this project, For us, for a little bit more money, we could get a 4-lane highway both ways, and I do know that our communities need it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Williams?
So I just wanted to point out a few things. Thank you to our clerk and recorder for having an incredibly transparent website. I can go back and read the ballot language from 2017, whereas the election is only a few weeks old and I cannot find the ballot language for Douglas County's ballot initiative just a few weeks ago, which put yet more money into roads. And I was really surprised at CCI. Douglas County has a 19 mill levy rate. They have enough money to put $20 million into school safety, which is not necessarily something that is a commissioner responsibility. And I think that this road actually benefits Douglas County. It benefits certainly all of our local businesses here, but it probably benefits Douglas County more with the number of people going up to shop in their shopping centers in Castle Rock. And I do believe that they have the money to put into the rest of this project. And I hope that they step up to the plate and do that.
All right. Well, thank you. I see everybody's fired up about this subject,
Yes.
and nobody wants to stop talking about it. I love the passion of my fellow commissioners when it comes to this topic. I think we all understand the necessity to fund transportation in the state of Colorado, and I know that we all want to do our part to do that. So with that, I will call the roll. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye, and that is a motion to
Oh,
approve.
actually, could I have a motion? See, I'm so fired up today. I'm doing this stuff. How about this? Could I have a motion to approve agenda item number 10?
So moved.
And I will second.
There we go. All right, now I'll call the roll. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.